question I know we often ask ourselves is, how do we make sure that our insights don't sit and gather dust and, you know, just don't get really used by our organisations? Because none of us want to waste our time, our energy, your money on you know, insights that aren't going to live and sing and breathe. So the big question we are here to address today is, how do we ensure that insights have a lasting impact on you and the organisations and stakeholders that you serve? So I'm really delighted to answer this with two of my colleagues, Andy Haylett and Alice Langthorne from Boxclever, and Kieran from Ooni, and they're going to share with you the story of our Aura award-winning, I have to keep mentioning that one as well, storytelling case study. And really what they're going to showcase to you today is how insight was embedded as a living, breathing force right at the very heart of the Ooni business. So over to you guys.
Before we dive into our case study, we are going to ask you to participate in a question that we'd like to ask you. And we just find that's really important to hear from you all on your own challenges before we hand over to Kieran, who's going to tell you a little about his challenge at Ooni. Because hopefully, I'm sure all of you have ran research studies in the past and had really great programs and great insight. But once you've presented that insight kind of 2 weeks later or a month later, nothing's really changed. And actually, you can't get your head around it because the insight was fantastic, but that insight's just not sticking. And hopefully that's somewhat familiar to you all. And hopefully what we share today will give you some inspiration of how you might change that in the future. So we're going to ask you this question on Slido. So what are your biggest challenges when it comes to bringing insight to life and making them stick with stakeholders? And over the last few months, we've been asking our own clients this question. And in the Slido poll, you'll see kind of the common themes coming up in the responses. So if you'd like to participate, there's the Slido QR code here. If you can't scan it from where you're sat, you can just go to slido.com and add those 7 digits. And yeah, we just invite you to select the challenge or the challenges that feel most relevant to you and your organisation. So we'll give you 60 seconds or so to do that.
So one's coming out on top currently, time and resource pressures, number 1. Number 2, turning insights into action. Turning insights into action we're going to cover for sure right now. Time and resource pressures, I think we're going to cover through this case study, I guess a whole range of ways of activating, right? It's things that take lots of time and effort and budget, and things that take very little time, 0 budget, and just a little bit of effort to kind of take things a little bit further. And then what else we got? Third one, started working, making cross-functional alignment. Yeah, that's definitely one of the challenges we had. So we'll come on to talk about that. Global teams, different departments, trying to run a big piece of work that is strategic in nature. It means that lots of people want to be involved. You've got lots of opinions, and you've got lots of people who have a vested interest in the outcomes of the research. So we'll cover all of those off. Let's talk about then kind of set up the challenge, right? So the kind of case study we're going to talk through today was this piece of work that we did with the Boxclever team, and it's all about audience understanding, right? That was the kind of the single objective of this, was to deliver total clarity across the business on Ooni's target audience, right? Who they were, how many of them they were, what their needs are, how they live their lives, and for us as a brand, and as kind of developing products, what we needed to do to be relevant for those consumers. So that was kind of the challenge. We needed kind of our product designers, right, who were sitting there kind of designing the next generation of products, to have the same set of assumptions, the same level of understanding as somebody designing our marketing campaigns, or speaking with retailers, or putting our POS into store, right? It was about this clarity of understanding across the business about the target audience, for different teams' kind of purposes and how they're going to go on and use it. Also, like Ooni grew really quickly, right? Over COVID, the business grew very quickly in a very short space of time, and there was lots of kind of side projects or bits of work done across various teams, various different regions, right, to kind of piece this together. So we had a bunch of working assumptions or hypotheses that people had, or that people were using, but they also weren't common across teams. So we needed to have this single source of truth that everybody could understand and be using across the business. And then lastly, kind of the other challenge that we had was this was a really good opportunity for us to kind of take the next step forward in our insights maturity. So Ooni being started out as a D2C business, so we had a lot of data on our customers, right? Who our customers was, who had already bought our ovens, right? But given the category that we're in, it's it's a one-off purchase. It's not a repeat or very frequent purchase. We also really need to shift the business away from thinking about who our current customer is to thinking about who our consumer of the future, who's going to buy us in 4 years or 5 years and 6 years time, right? Who do we need to be designing for? Where do we need to be building the brand? So there's a shift from the thinking about customers to thinking about consumers. So that's kind of the background, the context of what we're trying to do. So yeah, understanding our target audience. A few bits on the context and kind of speak to some of those challenges that all of you have kind of put together in that Slido poll. So global team across multiple regions. So how do you deliver something in a coherent and engaging way, right? How do you activate something like this across multiple regions, across multiple teams with different priorities, competing time zones, all that sort of stuff. You are looking at the Ooni Insights team, right? So a team of one. How do you get this done? Working with great agencies is clearly a way of doing it. But also, like, how can you deliver something like this at scale, right, across all of these teams? How do you manage your time, your effort, workload? How do you figure out what the bits are that really matter for you to focus on? All those sorts of things. And then insight literacy, right? I'm sure you're all kind of come across this. People who have used insights heavily in their current role or previous roles, and people who've never used it ever, right? Like they might be their first time coming across this. So we knew that we were never going to win anyone over on methodology or sample design or recruitment frameworks or what have you, right? It had to all be about the stories that we were going to tell and how we're going to make it memorable and bring it to life. And then senior team who are time poor, you've all kind of put that as your number one kind of challenge. So that one we've well covered. So yeah, the goal really kind of make it memorable, right? Like how do we make insights famous, right, within the business? And from my point of view, like something like this is really actually about, like, we're looking to get people to change behavior, right? We need them to do something different. Once they have this information at hand, we need them to make different decisions. We need them to plan in a different way. We need them to think about the target audience in a different way. So we're moving away from delivering the insights, but actually what we need to do is deliver a program, right, that is going to support people in making that behavior change and do something different with the resources and the budgets they have within the business. So all of that said, like we partnered with Boxclever on this for a couple of kind of key reasons. Like, I mean, one was the kind of the real emphasis on the activation, right? So it was clear, like from the approach, like we gave that 18-second stat, right, in our RFP, and the response that we got back was bang on point, right, around how we were going to do that, how we were going to bring it to life, how can we start to think about activation, not from when we finished the report, but from when we started writing the questionnaire. To me, that was kind of the biggest shift that I saw in kind of what we saw from what we saw across the different proposals. And secondly, from my point of view, like it's about how I think from my point of view, you get a feeling of how agencies like to work, right? And you can tell that the way that they like to work is either going to fit or not fit with the way that your business likes to work, right? So to me, it was about kind of those two things coming together: alignment of what's important, alignment of values, alignment of how they like to work, and I could foresee how that was going to work for us as a business at Ooni. So the last bit, just on the introduction. I guess this kind of sums it up, right? This is what we're trying to do. We're trying to get insights to be spoken about when we're not in the room. Like, to me, that's at the end of all of this, you can deliver the best report, the best presentation, the best workshops, right? But if once people leave the room, that's it, it's gone, right? And it's never spoken about again. Like we haven't done the job, right? So to me, it's about for projects like this, when we need people to do something differently, when we need them to be talking about this when they're planning their media buy, or we need them to be talking about this when they're in the room with retailers, or designing the next product. We're never going to be in all of those rooms. We can't be everywhere all at once to kind of hammer home this message. So this is really kind of, I suppose, the measure of success from my point of view is that this continues to get spoken about when you're not there. It doesn't rely on you having to be in the room to deliver the messages and tell the stories. And I'm going to pass. So Andy's going to talk.
Thank you. Yeah. So we're not here today to talk about methodology. We're here to talk about storytelling and the activation, because that's obviously the interesting bit of this project. It's important to note, though, that there is a research program that underpins all of this. So just sort of give you a quick overview of the methodology that we use, just so you know what it's all based on and where all the activation came from. So first of all, we've seen that stat around the 18 seconds for a proposal, and this is our proposal summary that we provided to Kieran in the first page of our proposal, outlining what we're going to cover in the research. So as Kieran explained, it's all about the Firestarter audience. They didn't know a huge amount of detail about them or how to engage them. So we're really looking to dig into the segment, get more detail on them, get face-to-face with them, understand who they are, what makes them tick, and really bring them to life for the business. So we did that with a global study across the US, Germany, and UK. Consisted of a large quant study and then a week long of digital ethnography in each of those countries. As I said, I'm not going to focus on the methodology itself. I'm going to spend the time talking about the impact that a well-planned activation roadmap can actually have. And importantly, we want to try and inspire you to start building activation from the very start of your projects.
Thanks, Andy. So as alluded to by Andy, we're not going to talk about the research methodology over the next 20 minutes. We're going to focus solely on kind of our activation and storytelling methodology, and hopefully that's why you're all sat here today. So at Boxclever, we've got a strong philosophy that insights don't fail because the findings are weak. Actually, what we believe is that insights fail because our stakeholders weren't brought on that journey with us. Got far more ownership of that insight when they're brought on that journey with us. So when to help us structure that journey, we use a framework called ADA. Has anyone heard of ADA before or used it in your work? No, brilliant. I can educate you all on what it is. So ADA framework is typically a customer journey framework that you use to map that journey from someone first being aware of a product right through to taking action, which would be purchasing that product. So I appreciate we're not trying to sell products here, but we believe we can use this framework when we're embedding insight too. So this is how we use it. So going right from kind of the top of that funnel, we're thinking about awareness. So how do we make our stakeholders aware of this project right from the start? Then navigating our way to interest. So how do we dial up that interest with certain audiences so that they genuinely want to lean in and be involved? For desire, at this point, it's all about making those findings so compelling that they're impossible to ignore. And then hopefully, if this has all gone to plan, by the time we get to action, that action should feel natural and not forced. And they take ownership of that insight because they've been involved. And the key here is intentionality. So not every single stakeholder we have identified has to go through this entire journey with us. For some, simply being aware that the project is happening and knowing who to lean on when the findings become available is simply enough. But we believe our core stakeholders, if they come on this journey with us, there'll be far more impact at the end. So over the next 20 minutes, we're going to bring all of this to life for you and demonstrate what we did to bring this to life. I just thought it was really important before we do that to just say and nod that this was very much a shared effort. So everything that you can see on the screen right now wasn't solely delivered by us as the agency. Kieran very much rolled up his sleeves and got involved with us to execute and deliver this plan. And one relatively small thing that made all of that possible was we decided and intentionally used Canva as our design platform. So hopefully some of you are aware of Canva in here, but it means that anyone who's don't even need design skills really can pick it up and run with it. You don't need Adobe or Premiere Pro, which obviously means resource and time and budget. And by doing that and having this plan from the off, we were able to identify which outputs we delivered and which outputs Kieran delivered, and could get to work executing this plan quite quickly. So just wanted to give you confidence there that you can work in that way by using tools like Canva along the way. So I'm going to bring all of these elements to life for you now. So I'll start with awareness before handing over to Kieran and Andy. So at this point, the goal is quite simple. It's really about getting people to tune in and think, something really interesting is here. I want to lean into this conversation and know what's happening, because we all know businesses are super, super busy places and projects are coming and going all the time. And there's so much noise that if we don't kind of create that noise, it's just going to kind of blend into the background. So that's kind of our goal here. And at this point, it's just about creating really strong visibility across the business and that sense of intrigue. So what did we do for awareness at this stage? And we did 3 simple things. So first of all, on the left, we gave the project a really clear identity. So as kind of Kieran alluded to, fire starters was already a common language across the business. It was documented in strategic documents and everyone was aware of this audience. So all we did was quite simply added the subline fueling growth, which then tied it back into kind of Ooni's strategic ambition. So once we got that going, Kieran recorded a really short video that you can see in the bottom right, which introduced the project to the entire business and those stakeholders we wanted to join in on the project, which gave it a really human touch. And we used that video in our Slack channel. So we intentionally chose Slack because that's where your business communicate. There's no email culture, which sounded wonderful to us at Boxclever, but we were invited to be part of that Slack channel too. So we could show up, Kieran could show up, share updates, allow people to join in and ask their own questions. And much to our relief, everyone did engage and were actually anticipating kind of the next piece of comms from us, which is what we really wanted to achieve at this point. So I think it's over to you, Andy.
Yep. So awareness is obviously key, but awareness alone is not enough to drive engagement with the project. So this is where the interest element comes in. This is the point where we convert people so they really feel personally invested in the project. So we appreciate that really interest really peaks when it's something that directly affects you, when it's relevant to your individual needs, when it's something you can really get behind and it can actually help you. So research brief comes with lots of questions. We have a briefing meeting. We go through the core client, start to build an idea of what's relevant, what's vital, what's nice to know, and so on. But what we don't really know is where all that comes from and the importance of each question and why they're in there. It's not until we start to spend time with the key stakeholders that we need to listen to their challenges, start talking through with them, dissecting them, and really understanding what real success for this project was going to look like. So that's exactly what we did. So as our first step with Ooni, we spent time up front with 5 of their most important stakeholders to really understand the role and the key challenges, also just to get to know them. This was pretty much a crucial first step as we really wanted to define the key strategic questions for the entire project. And clearly defining that up front was key to make sure that everything we did from that point onwards was going to be tailored to them, to be relevant, and therefore most impactful. It's going to resonate commercially and emotionally with them. But it's not just 5 key stakeholders. Interest doesn't stop there. There's a whole business out there that we need to be engaged and make sure brought into the project. They're going to work with the data, so they need to understand what's coming out of it. And we need to make sure that everyone was going to anticipate the results. So one of our first key deliverable points was a global launch event. We had a date in the diary and everyone was invited to turn up. We wanted people to come along with that and to see the event as being unmissable. So right from the very beginning, we set about teasing the business with emerging insights as soon as we started to evolve them. So a very simple but effective first step was to include an open-ended question in the qual screener, which was, for me, the joy of cooking is. That meant that immediately, just within a few days of getting started, we were starting to get some really interesting snippets directly from fast starters themselves. So we really started to share those out onto the Slack channel pretty much immediately. Over the next few weeks, we continued that teasing campaign, started to drip through more results in terms of what the project was first going to deliver. And then as the quant started to come out, we started to get some of the key pieces of information and drip feed those through on the channels as well. Alongside this, Kieran was doing the same sort of thing inside the business. So he was using some of the data to then communicate some of his own moments of interest, his own aha moments. We also then created an engaging sizzle reel, which we're going to share with the business just a couple of days before this global launch event. We're going to play it for you now, but all this activity drummed up lots of excitement and anticipation as we move towards that global event. There we go. So that then brings us on to desire. So that's the point of delivery and the point we need to make the insights impossible to ignore. But as we talked about, the challenge really is you've got a large audience, each with their own needs, their own areas of interest, their own levels of understanding, even their own hypotheses. We had so much to say and so little time, and how to feed that back was the key challenge. So we needed to make sure that what we were going to present was going to be focused, relevant, and commercially impactful, to ensure that when we started, everyone knew why they were there to watch it. So the strategic storytelling mindset that we employ means that the goal isn't really to blind with data or to try and say everything. We identified the key points that we needed to say, the elements that were going to be most important and those that are most likely to make a difference. So internally as a team, we did our first analysis and came up with our story. But then to make sure we had maximum impact, we had a face-to-face storytelling session with Kieran to create that final version. So that session was really about revisiting the stakeholders' needs, their key strategic questions, and making sure that we covered everything that we needed to answer. Together with Kieran, then we created that final kind of key insights to answer the core questions and make sure they had the impact we wanted to at that global event. So that's when we reached the final global launch event. And because we put a lot of energy into driving interest, we had over 120 people from across the teams around the world to learn about the fire starters. At this point, we did actually use PowerPoint, but it was a tight, carefully crafted, story-led PowerPoint presentation. The slides were very top level. It was professionally designed, visually engaging, clear, limited words, lots of consumer quotes and videos to really have that impact and to bring that consumer to life. And as you can see there, fortunately, it wasn't just our opinion that the insight landed with impact. This is a quote that came through live on the Slack channel.
Okay, so the rest of, I suppose, how do you continue to build desire? How do you take those, someone who's saying, holy shit, this is good? How do you keep them interested, right? And take them all the way through to, okay, now let's do something about it, right? So a few of the other things that we did kind of along the way, we kind of ran a Q&A webinar, right? So rather than kind of trying to save 3 minutes at the end of the presentation to answer everyone's questions, what we did was just got people to send us their questions afterwards, right? We gave them a week or so, and then we came back a couple of weeks later with a specific, okay, here's all the things that we didn't cover, here's all the questions that you had, and we teed up the question along with the data and kind of the supporting evidence. It was a global kind of kickoff. We then followed up with kind of each of the local markets, right, with the kind of the regional specifics that they needed for their markets. We did some kind of bespoke kind of packs for each of our exec. So actually kind of when we commissioned the project and kicked it off, we asked each of our exec, okay, here's the outline of what we're going to do. What are the questions that you want answered, right? What do you need to know for your function, for your area, right? What's most relevant to you? And then after we did the kind of the global launch, we followed up with each of those exec and said, here's the question that you asked, here's a couple of slides, here's the data that kind of answers the question that you've got, right? We made it tailored to them. We made sure we closed the loop on kind of what they wanted to know and kind of gave the evidence so that we covered it and showing them what they needed to do with it within their specific areas. Dashboard, right, to kind of for again, you'll always have a few people, right, they want to get really deep into the data. People are very data literate, right, want to know more, want to be hands-on with the data. So we kind of had a kind of dashboard where they're able to go in and do that, self-serve some of their own needs, right. The Boxclever team put together a pretty amazing kind of microsite, which this one here, right. Again, this is not necessarily about more data, new insight, right? A lot of this is kind of how do you repackage this in a number of different ways, right? How do you continue to land the key stories, the key messages, right? Something like a microsite is a great way for someone to go to. It's great for onboarding. It's great for when new people join. It's great to give people a single kind of point of reference to go to where they can find everything that they've already seen. And then the last one, we ran, this is a screenshot of it here, right? We ran a last chance session. We basically ran like a meet the fire starters session, and this got such good feedback from the team. And this was just a really clever way that the team put together like the qual recruitment, right? So we did the qual in-home diaries, and we left the recruitment open, and that enabled us to recontact people. In the end, this was kind of 2 months after we'd done the project. So we left that open as an option, right? And then we were able to recruit back 8 of the people that participated in the qual, and we just hosted a live 1 hour session over Zoom, open to anyone within the business, could dial in and join it, right? Again, we weren't covering new topics, but we were picking up on some of those themes. We were getting people to tell those stories in their own words. Again, added kind of to the kind of validated what people were thinking, validated those stories, and again, gave them another proof point of what we were talking about and bringing the target audience to life. So that was on desire. Let's move on to action, right? The very kind of bottom of that pyramid. And as Alice said, right, our intention is not to get everybody within the business to this point. Our intention is to get those teams that really need this information and are crucial to kind of the success of this all the way to this point. And I'm sure all of you have experienced, right? There's kind of that grey area between delivering the insight and the business taking action, right? And there's this kind of messy grey area in between, right? And really kind of what we wanted to do here was, so we're not responsible for taking the action, right? It's not within our gift to do that, within our budgets, within our plans, but what's totally within our gift is to lead that conversation, right? And facilitate that grey area in between landing the insights and people taking action. So that's kind of really what we focused this on. Again, a couple of examples here. A couple of examples of how we did this, right? Like, again, I'm sure you've experienced this. No one's going to take action because the insights team have told them to, right? Or they've written a nice recommendation. It's about, from my point of view, it's about making it, first of all, timely, right? So we tied this in with our kind of global brand planning, right? And so we ran some regional workshops with each of the 3 regions and tied it specifically into brand planning, right? We used the similar templates, same language, same types of things that they're kind of putting forward in their annual plans to make sure that the two were connected, right? Had we done this 3 months earlier or 3 months later, like it just would have landed at the wrong point in time within the business, right? And no one's really got able to do much with it because budgets are signed off, plans are in place, we're already rolling with that year, right? So timing this is to me is really key. And making it really relevant. So on the left hand side you can see like we put together these kind of needs frameworks, right? And these were for our product team. So kind of product designers, engineers, innovation teams, they love kind of a simple framework that can guide their thinking but isn't too constrained, doesn't have neat boxes to fill in, doesn't have a set template, right? But it's something they can go back to and refer to when they're doing their own ideation sessions, right? Or when they're planning or thinking about new products. Versus the bottom right hand corner there is like some of the specific kind of I guess along the lines of jobs to be done, right, framework that we put together for the brand teams in each of those markets, right? Brand sales and retail marketing teams, which fed straight into their annual planning. So those are just some of the ideas around action and how we facilitated that across different teams. So then, just to kind of wrap up, there's not much point in us standing here telling you about this great storytelling if I haven't got anything to show for it, right? So I kind of started off at the beginning saying this is all about behavior change, right? To me, that's the kind of success of this project. We wanted people within the business to do something differently after they've kind of understood, right, these insights and been through kind of all of this activation. So kind of the biggest evidence of that is kind of around a lot of our media planning, right? So Firestarters is now the kind of the core target audience that we kind of buy all of our media against, right? Across those three regions. This is part of all of the kind of frameworks we have with our PR agencies. So alignment of kind of the PR kind of hits that we're aiming for, the type of publications and editorials that we're going after, right? To align to this target audience, who they are, where they are, the type of things that they're interested in. This has become kind of our standard internally for testing, right? So all of our creative testing is done against this target audience. All of our kind of NPD, innovation and concept testing, again, is done against this target audience. We've rolled this into our brand tracking. So our target audience is kind of one of the subgroups that we've got within our brand tracking. So we've kind of taken it to the next step and now integrated it into other parts of our insights program and where it shows up across the business. And then to me, like to link to behavior change, right, it's about the investment, right? So success of this is that the business invests in this, in the outputs of this, right? We're not talking about a yes/no decision or A is better than B, right? We're talking about this is the target audience, this is what we understand about them, and here's how we show up, here's how we make ourselves relevant to that target audience, right? So off the back of this, it was kind of over 300 million impressions, right, from a media planning point of view, went against this target audience. And kind of all of our media dollars were bought against Firestarters and our target audience. And then when we talk about improved results, kind of one of the key areas we can kind of get into this again is within our brand tracking. So kind of 12, 18 months on from delivering this project within the business, we've seen a 9 percentage point increase in our aided awareness amongst this target audience. 4 percentage points increase in consideration amongst this target audience, and a 6 percentage point increase in share of branded search across those three key markets. So that is all from me on impact, and I think Alice is just going to wrap up from an activation point of view.
Yeah, thanks, Kieran. So just to bring it all to a close, I guess, and just wanted to share what we'd love for you all to take away from today, and that being that insight doesn't start at the end of the project when you're thinking about the debrief or the report that you're writing, but we genuinely believe that activation should start at the start when you're writing your brief, or in Kieran's case, the RFP, and how strongly this activation shone through. So I guess just building on that. So our belief is that activation isn't an output, and hopefully we've made that crystal clear today. It's not something that you just tack on at the end. It's something that you think about and consider right at the start. It's not a solo responsibility. So this isn't something that us as the agency took on. It was a completely shared effort between the both of us, really deciding where we needed to drive action and what that impact needed to look like. And thirdly, it's certainly not a one size fits all. You need to create kind of outputs that are tailored and relevant to your own audiences so they land, because if it's not, unfortunately, it just won't land with them. And hopefully what we've shared today really helps reinforce all of that for you. So I think at this point, we're going to pause and ask if anyone's got any questions for us that we'll answer, and then we'll have a short break. So over to you all if there's any burning questions on your side that you'd like to ask. And obviously we're around for the rest of the session, so you can grab us at any point.
Yeah, I guess a question for you, both of you, but I suppose building in all the activation from the start adds time to the overall project length. How did you find kind of selling that in at the beginning to the wider business that does take longer, but it's worth it?
I suppose in my experience with Boxclever is not necessarily the case. I guess having someone like Alice who is solely focused on activation, right? And it's not necessarily someone who's trying to juggle delivering you the research and putting together the activation plan, right, at the same time. The two ran really well in parallel. I do think there is a selling into the business of, I'm going to call it better activation, more activation, higher quality activation, for sure, takes time. I guess the approach was almost like, we knew what that delivery date was because it had to tie into global brand planning, right? And we could say to the business, we will absolutely have this ready for this point in time, right? And then in the following 4 to 6 weeks afterwards, here's all the additional bits that are going to come, right, and add to this, right? They're not going to be missing, but they're going to add to this and then keep improving it, right? It's kind of the approach that we took.
Yeah, and I guess just to build on that, something that we were really clear with Kieran at the front is we knew how much emphasis was on activation, and we didn't know what that plan looked like when Kieran shared his RFP, but we were quite confident, weren't we, and said we want to keep 15% of the budget aside. We know how strong activation needs to be. We don't know what it quite looks like right now. We've not connected with your stakeholders. We don't know what they need beyond what Kieran had identified. So after that stakeholder engagement that Andy referenced, we then got our heads together. So while Andy and the team were building all the quant surveys, etc., that's when we were kind of simultaneously coming up with that plan. So yeah, definitely didn't add any time, did it?
I think that, to me, that I guess I was asking for something, but I didn't know what I wanted, if you know what I mean. Like, I wanted activation to be important, and I'm sure you've all received proposals where they tell you can have an infographic at the end. I'm like, well, I don't know if I need an infographic. Maybe I want it, maybe I don't, but I don't know at the start if I want an infographic, but I want to know that there's time, resource, budget set aside for us to figure out as we go.
And we're seeing that a lot more on segmentations at the moment, is we're pushing back and challenging clients, like, let's just get to the quant and analysis phase, get that framework, and then think, well, what do we want to do in qual? Like, are we going in home? What does that activation need to look like? So yeah, just having the confidence to pause and consider what that is. So great question. Thanks, Kate. Anyone else? Go for it.
Thank you. Really nice presentation. You gave lots of examples of how you shared the insight. You did like side, you bespoke hats, and the Q&A webinar. Which one do you think worked the best, and would you not do any again?
Cool. Ooh, good question. Which one worked the best? I reckon the Meet the Firestarters session would work really well as like a way to almost like tie all together at the end, right? Like, we told these stories, brought it to life, right? But that's us doing it, right? There's still like a extra level of like authenticity when they hear it from that target audience, right? So that one, yeah, for sure landed really well. And then I think from like a leadership point of view, like asking them what are your questions, and then coming back to them later date and answering them, to me, like, that worked really well in that they by no means participate in all those different bits of the activation, right? And we don't need them to, we don't expect them to, but we made sure that we got their input up front, and then we kind of come back at the end and said, well, here's what you asked, here's what you need to know, and here's what we're going to do about it. And you asked anything I wouldn't do again. It was quite, I mean, I'm going to pick one of my own. Well, you know, I suppose sitting in your garden filming yourself doing a little video, it takes, I wouldn't jump at the opportunity to do it again, but if I had to, I would do it again.
Brilliant. Probably got time for one more question if anyone has anything burning. If not, you can grab us when we're making pizza. And well, 25 past. Let's give you 10 minutes. So yeah, enjoy.